Chapter 953. Wilbur's sword struck the Soul Clutch hand, exploding with spirit energy. The Soul Clutch hand was destroyed and crushed to pieces, and Wilbur's spirit energy sword also dissipated. The elder's expression shifted at the sight of the two jagged long swords. He flipped to the fourth page of his book, and a series of lightning bolts struck the jagged swords. The jagged long swords bounced backward from the attack, spinning through the air before landing with their blades buried in the ground. The elder got a shock as well. Just as Wilbur crushed the Soul Clutch hand, the blade of the thin, jet-black sword had broken through his skin and drew blood. Wilbur spun around at the very last second, throwing a punch behind him while aiming a kick at Baz. The thin, long sword slid across Wilbur's body, but that last punch had contained Dragon's energy, and the lady was forced to show herself once again, retreating several meters. The air nearby constricted too much, rendering the lady unable to use her dimensional powers for the time being. Baz had also been sent flying by Wilbur's kick. He made several turns in the air before he managed to still himself and land on the ground, his huge figure making a crater in the ground where he landed. Blood dribbled from the corner of Baz's mouth as he stared at Wilbur in disbelief. Everything seemed to have happened within a split second. Wilbur had destroyed the Soul Clutch hand, dodged an attack from the lady's thin sword while also forcing her to show herself with a blow, and lastly kicked Baz into the air. The lady, the man with the sword, Baz, and the elder's expressions turned solemn at once. This man had been able to hold his own, fighting against four people, all without using his spiritual energy. He was definitely a terrifying opponent. To make things worse, his backups had shown up before their goal was achieved. Three figures soared over, surrounding everyone else from afar. Eileen landed in front of her jagged long swords, summoning them into her grasp as he stared at the elder calmly. Zeke stood tall, staring at the man with the sword. Chester gripped his spirit spear, gaze locked on Baz. Wilbur smiled at the alluring lady. "You're not the only one with help here, you know." Zeke and Chester were both at the sanctuary level and Eileen was at the super sanctuary level. This was definitely a strong enough team to face up against the Riverbank Blossoms. Had this alluring lady not been a soulless, Wilbur would have completely crushed all of them by now. The lady narrowed her gaze, knowing that her mission had already failed at this point. "You are truly powerful. We thought we had understood you well enough and were well prepared for this attack, but it seems like we've still underestimated you," said the lady. Wilbur smirked coldly. "Did you think Gertrude understood me well? She betrayed us." The lady's expression shifted. Wilbur snorted. "She'd betrayed you from the moment she chose not to kill me. Yet here you are, hoping that she'd return and even have some form of impact on this case." "Retreat!" the lady cried out loudly, and a battle broke out once more. Baz let out a roar, charging toward Wilbur with overwhelming force. The men holding the sword fled at once as well. The lady let out an explosive cry. The blade of her thin sword lit up with energy flames, and she slashed across into the air before swinging at Wilbur. The elder flipped to the fifth page of his book, promptly turning to flee right after that. Honestly, their teamwork was pretty impressive. It was just a shame that they had underestimated their opponent. Wilbur let out a cry, his body lighting up with roaring energy flames as a terrifying pressure spread out around him. The soulless were able to mess with one's spiritual energy, but they were powerless against pure spirit energy.